Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for this latest episode of Korn Ferry Live. Once again, we're here to tackle the big stuff, those issues that have the business leaders buzzing. We'll be dissecting the hype and delivering insights that really pack a punch, unlike that Mike Tyson fight the other night. So whether you're a seasoned pro hunting for fresh inspiration or you're just starting your climb up the career ladder, you've landed in the perfect spot. So what's our theme for today, I hear you ask? Well, today we're diving into how inclusion can harness collective strength to drive breakthroughs and spark innovation. You should all know by now how important it is for you to all get involved, and I mean all of you. I will try to make it easy for even our shyest viewers out there to get involved. To kick us off, I have one of my simple yes or no questions. So, do you believe that innovation is essential for a company's growth? Yes or no? Simple. Pop your answer in the chat, and I won't move on until I see some answers. We've been here before, so come on, show me what you've got. And while I'm patiently waiting for you all, don't forget to use the chat for any questions you want to put to our guests. Let's make them really work today. So in the chat, I'm looking for a yes or a no. Not a lot of life yet. Come on, don't be shy. It's very simple. Here we go, a little bit of action. I'd call that a light response to the question, but I'll take it for now. Just a quick follow on from that. If innovation is high on your agenda, what gets in the way of it being successful? Interested to see if there's any common themes here. So just a short word or two would be amazing. I know it's a little bit more effort. I know you can do it. I trust you. I have faith in you. So come on, just 2 words, 1 word. Give me something. It's not much to ask. Thanks. I appreciate that. Okay, let's crack on. Let's do introductions. So as always, I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Korn Ferry, and today I'm joined by Andres Tapia, Senior Client Partner and Global DE&I and ESG Strategist, and also Michelle Buffet, Senior Client Partner and Culture and Change Solution Lead. Hello, guys.
Hey, Darren, good to be with you and be with Michelle as well, and everybody else.
Great to see you. Yeah, just to clarify, top team performance solution leader in terms of my role. Sorry.
Quite good. And fingers crossed, we've been having a few technical issues, so hopefully we'll stay tuned for as long as we can. So hopefully our viewers will be patient with us today. So let's crack on and let's get started. So as we can see by the title of our talk today, we're uncovering what the secret to team innovation is. So let's start by just giving that secret away, because that's the kind of team we are. We regularly hear about CEOs putting innovation at the top of their priorities. But in reality, how easy is that to do and to do successfully? You both set out to crack the code on the role teams play in successful innovation. So can you talk us through what that process was and what did you find? Andres, would you like to go first on that one?
Yeah, well, the correlation is there through research that more diverse and inclusive teams lead to more innovation. However, no one has really cracked the code about how it happens. It's just sort of this organic correlation. And we set out to see if they could find some causality. And so we approach it in an interdisciplinary way using, social science, using neuroscience, using organizational development science, in an interdisciplinary way, really landed on these 5 disciplines we'll elaborate in a moment, that we feel that if these are practiced on a day-to-day basis through different habits, then teams can actually not only make this thing happen, go from diverse, inclusive to innovative, but accelerate the process. And that's what we're going to talk about in a bit.
Great. Michelle, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, what I'll add is that I think it's about all the things that Andres mentioned, and then it's also a mindset shift. I think whether it's for team leaders or team members, to move away from this idea innovation is a task, to think about more in terms of the relationship. And you'll see in the way we talk about the 5 disciplines, some of the foundational disciplines are really about establishing that relationship that we've seen is the key ingredient that will unlock innovation in a sustainable way.
Great. And so you just touched on the 5 disciplines. Can you spend a little bit more time sort of just digging into those, put a little bit more meat on the bone, if you will? Who wants to kind of kick that off?
Yeah, I'll kick it off for the first 3.
Right.
The first one we would say is connecting. And connecting really is about connecting intellectually with a professional, educational, and sort of work-life experiences that people have had. And why this is important, as basic as that sounds, usually we say, you know, our title and how long we've been in an organization. And that's about all we do in a team introduction. But we don't really find out what else was formative to that person's experience, such as they might have been a Peace Corps volunteer. They could have been, you know, a refugee, you know, from a war-torn country. They could have been in a hyperinflation environment. You know, they could have had a master's in linguistics and they happen to now be an IT professional. So this connecting is really about cognitive and intellectual curiosity, about just finding out the more rounded part of people. And we miss out a lot on that. So that's one. The second one is caring. And this is now more about emotional empathy, about caring for the person, and really the things that matter to them in sort of on their more complete life. And this is where classic diversity comes in, where we find out more about issues of identity. How is it that, what are the 2, 3, 4 key things about how I see myself as I present to the world? So these are connecting, caring, sort of go together. And in our model, they sort of are the outer circles of the next 3. But you need that emotional and intellectual connection to one another. The third one is synchronizing. And synchronizing really comes, this is a part of our model that comes a lot from neuroscience, that talks about how our individual brains, when we're connecting and caring with each other, we release oxytocin, we release other hormones that really create a sense of well-being and trust and belonging. And now we start to get into flow. And flow is about the ability of this team of very diverse people finding their rhythm, finding traction, finding a way to get work organized, and by coordinated action, by common purpose. And the image I'll leave you with before I hand it off to Michelle to do the last 2 is, think about peloton and the Tour de France. You know, this is all these individuals, they're very individual, they're actually competing against each other, but at the same time, they're cooperating with each other as one drafts in front of the rest of the group, and then they take turns who's going to draft. Imagine the beauty of this peloton going through the hills and the cobblestones of the French Alps and the villages, but there's in the synchronized pedaling way, they have found a rhythm. And we see that as one of our metaphors for how a synchronizing, diverse team in an inclusive way can really hit on all cylinders and find flow as a connect and care one another. And before they do the last 2 practices, which Michelle is going to elaborate for you.
Great.
Yeah, so the 4th discipline is what we call the cultural dexterity. And what cultural dexterity, why we thought it was important to include is realizing that we're in a world that's global, that's operating at a global level, where we've seen sort of an unprecedented movement of talent, being able to make decisions across national boundaries. This has been an area of interest for me for many, many years. And I've sort of had the opportunity to be a cultural coach to a lot of senior leaders. So really recognizing that people bring a different set of assumptions, a different set of values, different set of beliefs around what innovation looks like. And so I think for us, cultural dexterity is about a self-awareness around kind of what you bring to the table, your own belief, your own assumptions, a curiosity for others, and wanting to being able to take other people's perspectives. That cross-cultural perspective taking that's been well documented in literature is something that we tap into in the way we talked about cultural dexterity, and to a point where the team can set its own culture that taps into all these different great contributions that any member can provide, right? So there's a lot there that I think for global teams to unlock. And even if you're sort of a team that's operating within a particular geography, there's microcultures, and it's not just about national culture, it's all the different influences that shape who we are. So I think that's the cultural dexterity piece. The 5th discipline, I have and Andres knows that I have a particular passion for this one, is around power sharing. And power sharing is the recognition that for teams, there's great value in letting power flow throughout its membership. We see a lot of organizations. So when we look at innovation, there's definitely a role for team leaders to play, but we see a lot of leaders get stuck in their innovation work because they're relying too much on a more directive or even a more consultative style. And what we see, high-performing, inclusive, innovative teams are teams that enable for power to flow in the organization, in the team. And what that means is that any member of the team at any point can be the team leader, can lead the discussion, can have a great sense of ownership around the work that's being done. I think that is probably one of the disciplines that also offers the most value when you can really engage in the right practices.
Yeah,
Right.
Darren, if I could add, bringing the five together, right? Because they don't operate independent of one another. And if we think about innovation, one of the biggest challenges of a team to be innovative is that innovation requires taking risk. And risk is hard when you do not feel psychologically safe. Because how am I going to come up with an alternative kind of off-the-wall idea that actually could be the very spark that creates a sort of alternative thinking? And that's why connecting and caring is foundational. Because when you connect with each other intellectually and emotionally, you start to really get the sense of who everybody is. And that fosters that sense of well-being that now when we go into the innovation part, I can feel safe enough to take the risks that then will lead to the innovative ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe we have a question from our audience. So if we get on the screen, here we go from Wendy. So how do you do this with teams that have dysfunctional cultures, particularly those that have entrenched hierarchies? Anyone want to take that one on?
Yeah, well, we're going to get into that a little bit later when we go about the path to more inclusive teams. What are some of the things that you can do? So maybe just briefly, and we'll get to that in a little bit more detail, but I think it's really about doing a bit of a diagnostic. You sort of understanding where you currently are, what is actually the issue that you're facing, and make sure that there's alignment on the team about what these dysfunctions are, because different team members might have different interpretation of what's happening. So I think it's really key to start with a shared understanding of actually what are the obstacles. And Wendy, we'll be able to get into a bit more of the details as we get further.
But actually, I think there's, let's make a distinction between what we're talking about and what Wendy has addressed. There's a lot of dysfunctional teams that before they can do this more elevated, inclusive teaming, they got to do that work. And to Michelle's point, the dysfunction could be for a lot of different reasons. It could be interpersonal conflict. It could be bad leadership. It could be a toxic culture. It could be so many things. So I just want to be realistic, right? That this inclusive teams thing sort of presumes a team that is functioning not perfectly by any means, but it's not toxic.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. And this, like you said, Michelle, this tees up the next question. I said at the top that it's all easier said than done. So kind of, and we've touched on already some of them. What's stopping these organizations? Yeah. What's really getting in their way? So I think, Michelle, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is I think you can look at it at three levels of barriers, right? And I always like to talk about sort of the personal, the interpersonal, and the more sort of enterprise-wide cultural types of barriers. And I think it's really about, so at the personal level, it could be, you as an individual, as we said, you come in with your own values, with your own behaviors, what feels comfortable, not comfortable. If you have a fear of failure, if you have a hard time sort of connecting with people, if you are reluctant to take risks, these are all things that at the individual level might be an obstacle for the team. Now, at the team level, the interpersonal level, it could be that maybe there isn't really a lot of collaboration going on, that there is, or that there isn't the space. So, we work with teams that barely meet. How are you going to have any kind of meaningful innovation if there's no interaction? Back to the connecting component that Andres covered. And then and I think that means kind of Wendy's question around the culture. There are cultures that also not necessarily very conducive to innovation. I'm thinking of a particular organization where I did a lot of work where, there's a very strong bias for the tried and tested. for the legacy, for protecting the way things have been done. And so that is a difficult environment in which you're going to really be able to make any kind of meaningful innovation.
And I would add that there are systemic barriers that can be addressed. So, a lot of organizations do not have the processes for innovation, right? They may talk a good talk, oh, we got to be more innovative, but it's not just, hey, everybody be creative, or hey, everybody, let's just be innovative on a day-to-day basis. There has to be not only a declaration that's important, but there has to be sort of a decision-making structure. Is our leaders and managers and teams rewarded for innovation, either given the time and space to innovate, and time and space also virtually or in person, right? Because we know that innovation actually does require some in-person face time, at least at the beginning, to establish greater connecting and caring. And that's a difficult thing for organizations to structurally provide. And the final thing I would say is, process-wise, do these cultures allow, from a risk and reward perspective, the ability to fail? And that is very hard for organizations to do, but the organizations that are innovative allow for that space and create time and energy for that.
Sure. When we asked in the chat what was holding you back, certainly fear was probably the most, I don't want to call it popular, the most in the chat. And then there was time, of course. And then another one was married to the status quo. That was another thing that people were kind of putting down as reasons that hold them back. So, and just a shout out to everyone once again, get questions in. We run out fast. Be more Wendy. We want more Wendy's. Come on, get those questions in, everyone. Andreas, when we were talking the other day, you mentioned Barilla and how they embraced all 5 of the disciplines. Can you share that story with our viewers? I thought that was really, really neat story.
Yeah, it's a great story. So this is a classic setup of a diverse story where a new factory general manager was assigned from northern Italy to southern Italy. For those who know the demographics and the sociology of Italy, there's sort of some regional tensions there, or cultural differences. So that was one difference in this new manager. Second, it was a female. And so, traditionally, factory managers are not women. Third, she was unmarried. So again, that sort of challenged traditional Italian culture views of roles and responsibilities and stuff like that. Fourth, she's tattooed, and she went to a more conservative part of Italy. So she comes in with all these great credentials: supply chain leader, assignments around the world, Italian, but had been, deployed all over. But they brought her back home to Italy and gave her one of the most difficult cross-cultural situations, but they felt confident in her ability. And she went in and she did the 5 disciplines. She came in fully aware that she was going to face some challenges. For example, when she went to the Chamber of Commerce reception, people kept asking her where her husband was, Mr. Melegari, the new factory manager, because they assumed that she was the spouse as opposed to the actual Melegari, that was going to lead the thing. So she knew what she was up against. So for a while, she didn't take action. She listened and connected with the employees, the managers, the leaders, the supervisors, many of them long-standing, tenured people. And she connected with their capabilities, their professional capabilities. What landed you here? What do you know? What is it that you know that I won't know, because of the particular role you have, but they've been there for 15, 20, 30 years. So she really explored the fullness of the intellectual and technical capabilities of their team that's connecting. And that started to say, yeah, she cares. She cares just beyond my current title. And then, she connected intellectually, but then she cared with them as people. She learned about their upbringing. She learned about if they were married, their children. She learned their children's names. She remembered their birthdays, so that, and she took kind of double more time than maybe somebody else would have had to, given how much distrust there was initially. But she really leaned into the connecting and caring in a significant way. Once she did that, she started to bring forth some of her observations, but observations about what was working, not working, but based on inquiry. Tell me what's working, she would ask her workers. Tell me what you would like to see. Where is it that things work really well? And where is it that things could be so much better if we could solve the problem? So she gathered that information. She synchronized it with her own insights, but folded in that the input that she got. And then she got them talking with each other, because these teams within the factory were very divided, very segmented, not divided in an antagonistic way, but just segmented, just because many ways some factors work. He says, there's some synergies here. Let's collaborate. Let's learn best practices with one another. And by the way, she started helping them connect and care with one another. And they established a social media thing that first was about sharing technical ideas, but then people start sharing personal stuff and things that they have done, and celebrations and weddings and baptisms and stuff like that. So she displayed and role modeled connecting, care, and they started to become organizational culture. And then finally, in the last two, she demonstrated a lot of cultural dexterity. She was very aware. She was a Northern Italian female, tattooed, unmarried, and dealing with a very traditional culture. And she just leaned into it, was in cross-cultural communication, and revealed more of herself and helped them be more adaptable.
Oh, it's me.
What happened
there? Oh, well, we had the technology gods against us, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, while we've lost, I've got another question for you, Michelle, if that's all right. We have these 5 disciplines, which is great, but sometimes 5, it's a big enough number and can be a bit daunting. So, do you have to have all 5 aligned from the start, or can you pick one at a time maybe? Is one more important than the others? Maybe you could sort of touch on that while we see if we can get Andreas.
We have a whole chapter dedicated to that in our upcoming book. And it's really about, what I would say is watch out for too much emphasis on one particular discipline at the expense of another. And so you could take each one of the 5 disciplines that Andres just described, and if you take it to an extreme, you can actually work against your objective, right? So I'll take connect, right? Too much connecting could sometimes lead to a clique type of phenomenon, where you sort of you're so connected that you're like isolating yourself maybe from the rest of the organization, that relationship becomes a little too exclusive. The caring, I guess could lead to maybe a less focus on results maybe, or accountability, because you care so much about the relationship that it takes over a bit of the task. So I won't look at each of the 5, but you see sort of the thinking is that too much of that. And so that to me means that that the team leader actually plays a really critical role, like a conductor, to ensure that things stay balanced. And so one of the things and it connects a bit to what Andres was talking about, like the key, I think the question that popped up on the screen around what organizations have done, to apply these 5 disciplines. I think one of the things I would recommend teams to do is actually look at the 5 disciplines and use these as criteria to set up ways of working and norms that are fit for purpose, that are fit for innovation. So as a team, you set up an offsite or you come together, look at these 5 disciplines and really ask the question, how do we live these things in the way that we run our meetings, in the way that we make decisions, and in the way we behave with one another, right? Yeah. And so that's really typically what we cover in these discipline processes and behavioral norms.
Gotcha. I think we might be. This is coming back.
Yeah,
he's kind of there. Can we hear you, Andres? Yes, we can see you again. Oh look, it looks like you're in the dark.
We had a massive power outage. Just everything.
Well, we have had everything thrown at us today, so I'm not surprised one bit. We have got one quick question from our audience. I don't know if we can get that on screen. Is that possible? Let's see. Okay, so something from Sean here. So hello. Hello, Sean. What are the diagnostic tools that are recommended to help identify root issues? Should these tools be customized? Anyone want to take that one on?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on. So I think in the approach that we recommend, just like a lot of the work we do, right, at Korn Ferry is grounded into data and good diagnostic. And so I think I would really leverage some of those tools, whether it's an online survey that guarantees anonymity and candid response, or anonymous interviews, stakeholder interviews that allow you to get deeper into the topics and probe into sort of specific questions. we're actually going to be proposing some tools to help teams do that diagnostic and feedback work. So stay tuned on this. But that's kind of like the way that we would recommend, is that the kinds of tools is really kind of good, solid diagnostic tools.
Great. We're just about to close because, as usual, we've run out of time. That always happens. But I just want to give our audience something really tangible to take away. So to just close, can you help give those leaders out there, the ones that might be struggling in this area or ones that might not even have thought about it in this way, can we give them some ways they could apply these insights kind of right now? I'm looking for some really practical advice. So I don't know who wants to go first on that.
Well, I'll go. One thing that Michelle and I discovered in the team doing the research is you got to turn the dial as a leader of a team and think about this very differently. We're so focused on leader to team, but usually it's leader to individual team member, right? And this is really leader to the whole team on an ongoing basis. And what that means is that rather than being a directive leader or just a performance management leader working on the capabilities of each person, it's really leaning into the team as a collective intelligence entity that operates in a synchronized flow way that is really greater than the sum of the parts. And when you say what can leaders do right now, first it's a mind shift of moving from directive leader to a facilitative leader, that you facilitate and extract the best of the collection of intelligence there, as opposed to being the one trying to say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. That would be a really good place to start.
Perfect.
And what I'll add is just be explicit about it, right? Make it part of the work of the team. I think oftentimes we see over and over when we survey teams, the one area that typically gets neglected is the team spending time together working on the team, right? Yeah. And so that really addresses this, is that teams will drive greater results, greater performance, greater innovation by focusing the work of the team on its team itself and defining the right conditions for their work together. So I think that's kind of I would say for any leader is or any teams is to spend the time on mapping what that looks like, for your team. How these 5 disciplines come to life.
Yeah. Hey, and Darren, before we hang up, I gotta finish the story.
Yes.
Yeah, but real story. So she, the final thing on power sharing, she really allowed, in a very traditional, hierarchical, always look to the top to make the decisions. She successfully was able to empower and enable people at every level of the organization to own decisions, at the assembly line, or when things were break down, or where things could be improved. And the most important thing of the story is the results. Their performance went up, their engagement went up, their sense of well-being went up. And so we know just from this one of many stories that this research that we embarked on really pays off, because these 5 disciplines come together into practices that are very actionable and very results oriented.
Brilliant. We got there. We made it. The technology gods were kind of on our side-ish. It's good you came back. So thanks, chaps. Really appreciate your time, and hope to see you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Oh dear, technology issues. And thank you for watching and getting involved. Without you, all of this really doesn't work at all. So that's the secret: team innovation. Remember, great ideas don't happen in isolation. They're born when collaboration, trust, creativity come together. So go back to your teams, try something different, and unlock the breakthroughs waiting for you. So thanks for joining us, and here's to your next big innovation. Goodbye.